You're logged on and listening to the Computer Corner Show, brought to you by Computer Corner, your local resource for computer hardware, software services, and training. Since 1983, Computer Corner is high-tech with a human touch. This is Phil Shortle, your host and lead instructor at Computer Corner, and with me here today are both the owners of Computer Corner, Carol and Joe Petronovich, and good morning to you with those good Irish names.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Phil.
Hey, may the luck of the Irish be with you and your computer today, but if it's not, and your IRQ is irked, your IP address seems possessed, or your interpreter is intoxicated, or if you have other computer problems or questions, we're here to help answer those questions. Shortle is the correct pronunciation of my name, but nobody in this country says it that way. It is an Irish name.
All righty,
Really?
then.
Okay.
So, we do enjoy taking your calls, of course, and all your questions, and we hope that you can, that we can also give you some valuable information to make your computing lives just a little bit more easy.
Yeah, you can always come to see us at Computer Corner. We're located at 3101 Manal Northeast, about 2 blocks west of Carlisle and American Furniture.
Right. And you can call Computer Corner at 881-2333. We're open today until 5 p.m., and Monday through Friday we're open 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for both service and sales. And we offer all the major brands of computer hardware like HP and Samsung and Dell and Intel and many, many more. And we even offer cryptocurrency mining rigs, which we've talked about, and gaming computers, of course, and all the traditional desktops and laptops and printers and servers.
If you happen to be in the market for a new computer, shopping for one might be a little confusing with i3, i5, and i7 processors, desktops, laptops, tablets. What's the right choice?
The salespeople at Computer Corner are really great at making recommendations for you based on what your needs are. That is to say, specifically what you're going to be using that computer for, but what do they base their recommendations on?
I think most people know whether they want a laptop or a desktop computer and base that decision upon whether they want the computer for travel or not, so that part's easy. But what about the processor or hard drive type? That's where it gets confusing.
So let's tackle the hard drive first, or rather the storage device first, because it's a little bit simpler than the processor. There are basically 2 types of storage devices these days, SATA and SSD. There are actually other types in some servers and other devices, but we're going to keep it to the typical computers, I think.
And most desktop computers are still being offered with a traditional SATA hard drive. This is a standard hard disk drive that uses a mechanical arm with read-write head to move in and out and read information from the storage platter. By the way, SATA stands for Serial Advanced Technology Attachment.
Right.
I'm sure you were all worried about that.
And SSD is a solid-state drive, and it utilizes the same technology as a USB thumb drive. There are no moving parts, and the information is stored in microchips, which makes this type of drive more appealing when you're buying a laptop because there's no moving parts.
Right, because if you have a laptop with a standard SATA-type drive with the mechanical arm and the laptop gets jolted or dropped, God forbid, you are more likely to have hard drive failure and data loss than with an SSD-type drive with no moving parts.
So an SSD drive also takes less time to boot up. So those are 2 good things about them. They don't get damaged as easily and they boot up much more quickly, but they do have less storage capacity for the money. You pay more for a 256 gig SSD drive than you would for a 2 terabyte SATA drive. So an SSD is upwards of 8 times more expensive.
But they are so much faster on the boot. To me, it is well worth it. And I recommend to anybody, if you're getting a new computer, look into that. Or if you have to replace a hard drive, look into it. You will be surprised and very well pleased. Now, let's talk about processors, though. We're going to keep it to Intel processors because 80% of laptops and 90% of desktop computers have Intel processors, and that's also the majority of what we sell at Computer Corner.
And both Windows-based and Apple OS computers are Intel-based these days. And it seems simple on the surface because there are Intel Pentium processors, Xeon processors, then there's i3s, i5, and i7 processors. But that is actually kind of confusing. But we're going to exclude the Xeon, which, by the way, is spelled Xeon, because those are usually only typically used in servers and high-end workstations. And it's for specialized usage,
right,
so we're going to stick to the regular.
So we'll narrow it down to i3, Pentium, i3, i5, and i7. You would be right to assume that the difference in each step is speed, but there's more to it than just the clock speed or gigahertz of the processor. By the way, I one day fell down in my gigahertz, but that's a whole other thing. By the way, one gigahertz represents 1 billion cycles per second. So a processor that runs at 200 gigahertz executes 200 billion cycles per second. Let me put that billionth of a second into perspective to you. A billionth of a second relates to 1 second as 1 second relates to 30 years.
Wow.
When I first read that many years ago, I said to myself, that can't be true. So as a card-carrying nerd, I went ahead and did the math for myself, and I found that it is indeed incorrect. A billionth of a second actually relates to 1 second the way 1 second relates to 31.2 years.
I'm so glad that you told us.
Yeah, I thought it'd be accurate. It'd be good.
Very relevant to everything in our lives these days. But additionally, each processor chip, also called a microprocessor, or CPU, by the way, additionally, it's comprised of multiple cores, which also enhance the processing power. So each core is like its own processor, and a Pentium and i3 processor have 2 cores, while an i5 and i7 processor have 4 cores. So, see, this is confusing, isn't it? So if you have an i3 processor with a clock speed of 3 gigahertz compared to an i5 processor at the same 3 gigahertz, the i5 would outperform the i3, and in part because of the i5's 4 cores compared to the i3's 2 cores.
Because it's actually capable of doing twice as much work.
Right, but for other reasons too.
Yeah, some people refer to the 2 cores and 4 core technology as dual core and quad core, just so that you are all aware. I think we're going to leave it at that for now, but there is more to the picture when comparing processors. There are also threads inside each core, hyper-threading, turbo boost, and cache, all of which enhance the processing power even more extensively and sometimes increase the confusion just as extensively.
Right.
But if you're interested in that, come down to the shop. Talk to any of the people there in the retail portion of it, and they'll be able to explain all of that stuff to you in complete detail.
So for most people, though, with the average computer needs, a Pentium or i3 will probably work just fine for them. But people who are running multiple high-end software applications, extreme computations, graphic design, architectural work, and such, they need the higher-end processing power for sure, or their computer would be too slow for them to be productive.
Okay. So hopefully that explains some things to you. Steve, thank you for your call. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And what can we do for you? There we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right. My question was about e-filing tax returns. So the 2 questions are, have you got a tip on why I was unable to send my tax return through my firewalls and what I might be doing incorrectly? And the second question is, do you think that's a good idea to e-file? So I have a IBM clone laptop computer with Windows 7 Home Premium, and it's got its own organic firewall that I guess is part of the operating system. And in addition, I have a Vera virus protection. I'll go back to Kaspersky now that I know that it's not a dangerous spy antivirus. But for now, I'm at Avera, and I don't see any firewall in the Avera. I've disabled the firewall in my computer, at least I know I did. It said this is a dangerous thing to do. Can you think of anything I might have done wrong that would have enabled me to send it instead of having it fail?
That's a tough one. I e-filed on the 15th, but I did it at my accountant's office, and there was no trouble whatsoever there.
I haven't heard of anybody having trouble like this.
Right.
So,
okay.
I'm afraid that we can't really envision what might be happening. Maybe some of our listeners might have had this similar experience and could weigh in on that topic.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the help, and like the show. Thanks.
Thank
you so much.
Sorry,
we appreciate your call, and sorry we couldn't be of more help to you on that.
No, that's all right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
It's probably a very specific and unique set of circumstances just for Steve there.
And that brings me, Jason, you are on the air. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And what's on your computing mind today?
Well, I got a couple questions, and I'm just so you know, I'm all Apple. And my computer's 2010. We're getting older. Still okay, but I'm in the process of deciding whether to buy a new Apple or do what you guys are talking about, upgrade my hard drive and upgrade all my stuff to the new SD so that I have a new type of storage processing, like you're saying, because the storage is filling up. At the time we bought a smaller one, I don't care about having this high graphic, high resolution
Sure.
screen. I'm not watching movies or just working off of it, doing schoolwork off of it. But it is filling up, and I need to expand my storage.
Okay, so here's the thing. You said your computer, it's an Apple. That's also, you had it since 2010?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
2010.
It's getting old. That's what it really boils down to. And it doesn't matter whether it's a PC or an Apple, it's getting old. So you're going to have to really weigh the factors out. Do you really want to invest in upgrading an older machine that's potentially not going to last too much longer? Or would you rather get into a new computer with a brand new warranty and more bells and whistles for certain?
Take a bite out of that apple,
Yeah.
so to speak.
If I do the upgrade myself, you're looking at probably $800 to buy something that would be at that level. I'm looking at $2,000.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. And
Sure.
You're right. The rest of the components could go and fail. You're right. What do you guys think about that? And the second one that I had is you guys talking about thumb drives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Spent 10 hours working on something, plugged it in, and nothing was there. Couldn't get it out.
They are not the most reliable source of storage.
Especially when you drop them into the porcelain convenience, as I have done on multiple occasions.
Thanks for
What do you
sharing.
recommend instead of a thumb drive? What do you recommend to store on portably?
Well, they do make portable USB hard drives, and yet you could actually have it either a SATA or an SSD portable drive. So it's a little bigger, obviously, than a USB drive. It doesn't fit in your pocket.
And makes it harder to drop into the porcelain convenience
Right.
that way.
But they are pretty lightweight.
It works best with Apple?
They should.
Right,
USB is USB is USB.
Right. So we do have some of those in stock at Computer Corner. If you want to come by, you could talk to the guys in my showroom today about that, too.
What size is your drive in your Apple now?
Oh, it's old school, so we're looking at...
120
I think
gig?
at the time, like 512. We bought the best. With Apple, you usually buy the best you can afford at the time. You usually don't upgrade Apples. You buy the best you can afford.
Yeah.
I would upgrade that drive anyway to a 120 gig SSD. They're really cheap. And just use that computer as a spare just in case, and then still go out and buy the new one.
Okay.
So you've got lots of options, actually. You could just upgrade that computer and hope for the best, or not upgrade that one and get a new computer, or like Joe says.
Yeah, that's I think probably the best idea to use that one as a backup and get a new one. I understand that price. I do.
Yeah, the 120 gigs SSDs are like $70 maximum right now.
The real thing is, Jason, that it's not an if question when this thing is going to fail. It's a when question. And at 8 years old, you figure a computer is worse than a dog.
Yeah.
They aged it 12 years probably for every 1 year, and that means you have a pretty old computer.
I've seen Macs go for 20 years, though. I've seen Macs go forever.
Oh,
my mother-in-law
yeah.
got a 1983 Mac.
So some of the computers that we build at Computer Corner, and we've trademarked under the name Equus, we have people bring in 20-year-old computers and they're still working. They don't run any software anymore because things have advanced. But yeah, it is possible for them to go on for a long time with quality components.
Okay, Jason, so thank you for your call. Bye-bye. I'm going to give you a quote from a famous Irishman, Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Sharon called in, and we are talking to you now, Sharon. And what can we do?
Well, I'm not an expert with computers whatsoever, but I am the secretary of a small club, and we're putting together a directory, and some of the people have sent me ads to put in this directory.
Mm-hmm.
And today I got one that was made by Publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And when I clicked on it to download it, I get this message that says, Publisher failed to start correctly last time. Starting Publisher in safe mode will help you correct or isolate a startup problem in order to successfully start the program. Some functionality may be disabled in this mode. Do you want to start Publisher in a safe mode? And it gives me the choice of yes or no. Is that safe?
Yes. And what you would do would be to start it in safe mode. And actually, when you do that, sometimes it corrects some of its problems. Start it up and open the file, close the file, and then close Publisher and start it up in normal mode. And it's happened to me in the past, and it just works.
Okay, now I don't have Publisher on my computer. Will
Well,
it
that's
still
really
work?
unusual. Yeah, that's going to be a different story. What you want to do is tell the person who sent you the ad to save it again in Publisher, but this time save it as a PDF. And then that will make it so that you will be more easily able to import that. And if you have any trouble, send an email to radioshow@compcorner.com. Attention, Phil, because I do this, what you're trying to do, all the time.
Okay.
And
All right.
make sure
I
you put it
appreciate the information.
and make sure if you do send the email, you put attention, Phil, because otherwise somebody else will try to answer it and they won't know that we've already talked.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Bye-bye. That's something that happens all the time.
Right.
And you know, it's happening even more frequently these days with all the patches to Office that have come in. Office keeps changing on me. Richard, thank you for your call. You have a question for us, and hopefully we have an answer for you.
All right. I actually have a couple. I'll try the easy one first. The question about the quad or dual core.
Mm-hmm.
Does that matter which one you have for web surfing? I usually have like multiple websites open, different windows, like 6 or 7 at one time. Would it? Does the quad core or dual core help with that one way or another?
Basically, any process that you are performing, and if you expand on that and then you're performing 6 different processes, then yes, a bigger processor, an i7 with a quad core or something would be more beneficial, but it's kind of going to depend on if you're streaming or if you're, watching videos online. What are you doing on the internet? Because typically that's not really a big taxing.
Yeah, it's going to be more dependent upon your internet speed than the processor speed in those cases.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do look at watch on trading webinars, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
All right.
It's never going to make it worse.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good way of putting it. You said you had multiple questions.
Yeah, one more.
Sure.
I got this thing, I don't know, on the computer, so I printed it. Anyway, it's called F-Secure Router Checker, like in Frank. It says it's a router checker. It's free, web-based tool that checks your router settings and detects if it may have been hijacked by criminals. Have you heard of that, and is something like that necessary?
Okay, I have heard of F-Secure, but I don't believe that we're familiar with the usage. I actually had sold not a free version, but I had sold F-Secure to Los Alamos Laboratory. So I know that it's a valid product. But I would be leery of running anything that you didn't initiate yourself, by going out to somebody's website and downloading the software, because all kinds of viruses and malware are masquerading as real product.
And Richard, do you know how to get into your router without an outside software?
Not really.
Okay, there's a way to do it. I would caution you before you do this that you have to kind of really look around and understand what you're doing. But you can access your router directly, usually by typing into the web browser 192.168.0.1. Sometimes it's .1.0, but most of them are 0.1. And you can get into your router settings yourself, which, I'm in there about every once in a while myself.
Oh,
but all the settings are controllable by you, changing passwords, setting up things, setting up ports for remote access and stuff like that.
Richard, do you own the router, or does Comcast or...
Well, I bought it, but it's a CenturyLink.
Oh, okay. You should have had the manual for it. If not, call them and get them to send you the manual, and it'll give you all that addressing and the administrative passwords and the defaults and everything else. It's good to have.
So that way you can set the settings where people can't hack it as easily?
Well, you'll have complete control on the firewall settings,
right,
and how strict you want your own security, including your wireless setup around your home.
Okay.
And just be aware that you should read the manual first, because it's possible for you to change a setting and cause yourself to lose the connection. Now, usually then, even if that does happen, the router has a button to allow it to be reset to its default settings. But it's kind of disconcerting when that happens, I know, because I've done that.
Rather than contact CenturyLink for that manual, I think you're going to be better off just Google that model number and download the user manual.
Yeah, that's what I usually do.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, do you use router checkers at all?
No.
Okay.
No, there really is no reason to use that.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thank you for your question, Richard. Ben, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah, I have a question about doing updates on Windows 10. I have a machine with very limited capabilities in terms of RAM space and storage space. So it seems like whenever I do updates, they don't succeed first try. I have to manually restart the computer 3 or 4 times. My conclusion is that the reason is there's just not enough place for it to store. I'm wondering if that could be assisted anyway by plugging in external storage, external USB pen drives.
We don't think that's going to work for you.
How much memory do you have in your computer? It's probably 4 gig, right?
No, it's only 2.
Oh my gosh!
And the storage, it's just an SSD. It's only 30 gig, and 23, 24 gig is pretty much used. There's typically only about 5 or 6 gig available when I try to do these updates. The last major update, it made several major errors, and I worked with Chris on it for a while, and Chris and I concluded there really isn't much we can do as far as enhancing the capabilities of the machine.
You know, I'm going to give you a real big suggestion based on how old that computer is and the limited space and memory you have. And
it's not age. It's just deliberately an inexpensive machine for the portability.
But you might want to think about just shutting off Windows updates.
Yeah, I've done that to the extent I can, but you know how they are. They force you to sooner or later take those updates whether you want them or not.
Just get into Control Panel, go to Administrative Tools, on the right side of the screen, arrow all the way down to Services. Once again, arrow all the way down until you see Windows Update, and click on Disable. And then you won't get them anymore.
Yeah, the problem, of course, is it seems like you have to do that sometimes, but you really need the updates. But if you can't process them, you can't process them. So there's not much.
And they do take a lot of storage and memory to run. So.
Yeah, indeed they do.
The other thing that I found when they fail and then they revert back to changes before, I've tried to just do 2 or 3 of them at a time, reboot, do another 2 or 3 at a time, reboot, and that seems to work, rather than all of them all at the same time.
Okay. Ricky, you have a question for us?
Yeah, a computer I bought a couple of years ago. I put a Kaspersky that I bought from you guys, and it's been popping up that I have an Adobe Flash thing that's like trying to get me to accept it, and then I get a thing from Kaspersky that says that it has a virus. So I close it, and then I tried to run a scan, but it said that I allowed it, and I don't remember doing that. Maybe through my email or something.
So first of all, yeah, it's probably a spoof, and it is probably malware. Flash is very commonly hacked, I will say. And I can let the guys weigh in on this, but first of all, if you do need to get the latest version of Flash, you want to go out to Adobe's website directly and download that from their download menu. So anybody out there, don't ever click on those little invites, those pop-ups that invite you to download something based on their advice on the screen popping up. Now, what else can you do, guys?
Well, some of the software out there, like some of the mining software, for example, it will come up looking at the main file and say it's a virus. Kaspersky will log it as that, but if you then go over to the place where it says delete, if you right-click there, just arrow down and say ignore it, and that works.
Okay.
Instead of delete?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Ignore.
Unfortunately, every time you turn your computer off and turn it on and Kaspersky runs again, it's going to come up and ask you that same thing and just do the same thing, just hit ignore.
Oh, okay. So if I did a virus scan, because I'm pretty, not a whole lot computer savvy, if I just did a scan and Kaspersky says no threats detected, does that mean I'm pretty much safe? Or?
Yep.
You're good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for the call, Ricky. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, the Computer Corner show will be back in 2 weeks. We hope that you'll think of Computer Corner for all your hardware, software, services, and training needs. Remember,
you get more at the corner. Computer Corner.
Until that time, please mind your bits and bytes. This is Phil.
And Carol.
And Joe.
Wishing you carefree computing. The Computer Corner radio show is logging off.